Today on the Brew, we are going to talk back to basics. We're going to start with Delta, and we're going to work our way through the Greeks. What we're going to do is take a look at all of these Greeks, how retail traders look at it, how professionals, and if there's any sort of benchmarks in Jason's sort of bow land. So let's get started and get back to basics. Good morning, gents. How are you?
Morning, Lex. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. So, did we have a show in between our time in New York and now? No, this is the first one.
Last week I thought we did a show.
Oh, we did? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
All right. I forgot we did that little TikTok video in Soho, so we have to add that to the mix.
Hopefully that hasn't gone public yet.
It hasn't gone public. I mean, you weren't wearing a shirt in the middle of winter. I don't know what was going on there, but
now we need it to go public.
Now we need it to go public. All right. Bueno. So I think, Jason, this was your idea. We're going to go back to basics, right? Which I like. I think, interestingly, the retail investing, trading public, let's say, their look at Greeks might be a lot different than a professional's look. Right. So, Mark, you're going to serve the professional. I'll serve the retail. Jason, you're going to serve. I don't know what you're going to serve. What are you serving?
I'm serving data.
You're serving data.
I'm proving out what you guys say.
Whatever. All right. So we start from the beginning. Hey, by the way, Mark, let me ask you a question. When you talk about the Greeks, isn't there a specific order that they go? Like if they were listed on an application, it would go Delta, Gamma, Theta, Vega, Rho.
I don't know if that's formal, but like it's not like calls on the left, puts on the right. Formal. Yeah. Okay. But that's probably the order I would put them in. Like you need to see your Delta in context of your Gamma. Then you're probably asking your question about Vega, and then Rho's all the way at the right because that only matters when it matters.
Yeah, and who cares about Rho, for God's sakes? I mean, no retail person trades beyond, a few months, I'm guessing. So Rho is a little bit crazy.
Rho is to option traders like a kicker is to a football team.
Very important. Don't ever forget that about the kicker.
You don't know they need them until you need them.
That's a good point.
Rho is kind of what's going on in DJT right now. We talked about that last week, right? Like that's a carry question.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Retail wants to look at that and go, oh my gosh, like I'm definitely shorting DJT. It's like, okay, well, you got to understand that it's guaranteed to go down 25% according to what the forward pricing is looking at.
Right.
So make your bets based off that.
Right. Okay. So we'll save Rho for later. Of course, we're going to talk about Delta today. I'm getting the remarkable out. Don't worry.
All right.
So Delta, who wants to give us a crack at Delta? What the hell does that mean?
Well, I'll start since I'm being data guy. So first and foremost, these Greeks are derivations of a pricing model and trying to price options. I mean, the first one, I guess you could say, was the Black-Scholes model, and Delta is the first derivative of the Black-Scholes model or whatever pricing model you have as it relates to the underlying price. So I guess you could say the formal definition of Delta is the amount your P&L changes based on of your option based on movement in the underlying price.
So can we say that differently? Can we say the amount your P&L changes or the amount the value of your options change?
Yes.
Which could be attributed to P&L, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay.
The value of the option change. Yes.
Okay. So for instance, give us an example. 50 Delta. What does that mean in straight layman's terms?
Okay. 50 Delta. Typically that's the at the money strike.
Mm-hmm.
If the underlying price goes up $1, then the value of your option goes up 50 cents.
Okay, perfect. Is there and by the way, conversely, if the stock goes down $1, that option would technically go down 50 cents. And there's nuances here that we'll get into with Gamma and everything else on another episode. Okay, so that's one definition. Mark, we also refer to it sometimes in the pro world as being the probability that the option finishes in the money. Now, people don't like that so much. What are your guys' thoughts on that definition?
I think it's important to note that it finishes at that level. Like the probability of touch is of course a completely different metric, but it's it's shorthand for the probability of it finishing in the money. And I think the third one that kind of ties to that, right, is the hedge ratio. And then I think that's like a reasonable proxy for the probability of it landing in the money, is also because that's like how you want to hedge that option. If you were to offset the delta of the option, you'd hedge with shares of approximately that value. So that would give delta neutral position.
So the third definition technically is the hedge ratio. Safe?
Yep.
Okay. And all that means, so what, as on the pro side, what we would do is, if we bought options, sold options, whatever the sum of all those deltas adds up to, let's say it's long 1,000. Again, I'm making it up. We would be long 1,000. Typically, what the market maker guy would do is sell 1,000 deltas to get to delta neutrality. That was a very big concept for the pro side of the game. Is that also safe to say, Mark?
Yeah, like I was going to say, in a lot of ways, my definition of delta is like shares, long or short equivalent. That, if you're long 1,000 deltas in your position based on all your options or, stock positions, then you had the equivalent P&L as if you owned 1,000 shares, if that stock were to go up or down.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So it's a stock equivalent, which I guess that could be a fourth definition technically, right? I'm going to put that as number 4.
3B. Right?
3B. Okay. Yeah, because the way you can look at it, and what I see on the retail side is they're like, well, you guys tell us that it's great to trade options. Trading stock, just buying and selling, it's super expensive. How do I get a commensurate, exposure using options? Right. So think about it. You're buying 100 shares of stock, you can buy 2 50 delta options, right? Technically, to sort of have a similar sort of, exposure. I mean, similar, I don't say the same, because you don't have nearly the downside you do with the option as you do buying 100 shares of stock, right?
So for $1, you have the same exposure.
Technically, right?
Today.
Yeah. Today.
I think
instantaneously.
Atomically, your position is identical. But I think that's an important concept, right? Is that like, we talk about one way the pros talk about deltas is the hard and soft deltas. So yes, atomically, instantaneously, those 100 shares of stock is equivalent to 250 delta call spreads.
Right.
But like those call spreads, Gesundheit, are soft in the sense that they evolve, they decay according to time, they decay according to, or not decay, but adjust according to implied vol movements, to gamma movements. Like all of those are much softer deltas because they're going to crumble and build and accelerate and decay, like as the underlying moves and time passes and assumptions change.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. So
where stock is just stock. 100 shares of stock is 100 shares of stock.
That's a hard delta. We would consider that a hard delta.
Except when you get bought in.
Another show.
Not as hard.
Not as hard. That's right. Okay. So what do you think the typical retail trader thinks about delta? Do they look at that a lot? I've got an answer, but I'm just going to toss it out to you guys. Do they look at that? Is that an important metric for a retail type investor / trader?
I would say it's the most important. I mean, I think it's the it would be the first thing that the retail trader should look at, because especially, look at definition 2. If you see a 50 delta option and it's, 10 points higher than what the current price is, that the market is expecting, the 50-50 shot, that basically at the money, being 10 points higher at that time frame, whatever the expiration is. I'd also say that the retail trader is primarily concerned with P&L. So knowing how much at least for $1 at that instant moment, knowing where to where to buy your option and, you know, kind of what price you want. And also I think that a lot of times too, I wouldn't say this is a definition, but kind of delta is also kind of like a landmark, you know, when somebody says the 25 delta put or the 25, you know, delta call, negative 25 delta put. People look at that and say, you know, they kind of get an idea of how far away you are from the current price. So without actually defining it as, you know, 50 points or 40 points, because the delta is kind of as far away as you are from the current price. That 25 delta distance can tell you a little bit about the implied volatility of the option as well. So delta is really like a landmark. What?
No, yes, totally agree. Totally agree. What he's saying.
I was like, are you booing me, man?
Oh, yes, that's exactly.
He was giving you, I don't know, he might have been giving you a diss and then a thumbs up. I can't do a thumbs up because I'll freeze.
So I think delta is probably the most important and the easiest probably to understand metric that the retail trader looks at when looking at options.
Okay.
I totally agree with Jason on two very important points.
Okay.
One about it's the most important thing for a retail trader. Like at the end of the day, we're trading equity options, right? Like direction underlying is going to have a lot to do with it. Whether, you know, vast majority of retails are trading some kind of covered call or overlay, like delta really matters there. But to expand on the idea of this sort of like normalization number is super interesting, because exactly like Jason was saying, that like you can compare across different issues, that you know that like the 25 delta in Tesla is, you know, roughly comparable in some dimensions to the 25 delta in SPY or whatnot. But it also can be like an interesting strategy dimension to say within the same issue that like, where is the 25 delta call and SPY? And that's the volatility environment that he's talking about, that like the 25 delta in SPY might be $20 away when we're at a 12 vol, but it's going to be $40 away when we're at an 18 vol. And so like using that as like sort of a normalization factor, I think is huge.
Yeah, I think here's what I think. I think those are great points, by the way. I think that the typical retail trader doesn't look at it that way. I think that that's a concept that, as you guys just defined, is a great concept, and it's something they should know. But I'm not sure that many of them follow that, because, you know, I think they have this method of saying, here's the type of option I want to have in inventory, and it could be whatever, 50, 25, you name it. They have their special spot, right? I think they lose the translation of, why is Spider, the 25 delta option, all of a sudden 40 points out as opposed to 20 last week or 2 weeks ago? I think they missed that thing. And I think it's good you said that, because that's important to understand. There's implied volatility, you know, expansion or contraction, depending. That's super important to know, right? So I think the other thing too about retail folks is I don't think they put positions on to be delta neutral. I think they put them on to be not delta neutral, right? They are directional type folks, which they have to be, because they don't have an edge proposition between the bid and the ask, right? So there's something else going on there. So I think they pick how many deltas they're going to take based on, am I selling this at the money call spread? Am I selling it out of the money? You know, where do I begin my journey with creating my position, right?
Well, and like to your point about like most people are doing overlay type positions, but like using delta as a foundation for that is really powerful, because, you know, instead of saying I always want to, you know, collect 1% on my covered call this month, or I always want to sell the 2% out of the money call, if you anchor that based on delta, you're adjusting your capture based on the volatility environment. Sometimes it's going to be low premium, sometimes it's going to be higher premium, but you're consistently, you know, capturing that same standardized probability of getting called away. In the covered call example, you sell a 25 delta call, roughly 1 in 4 times that's going to happen. And that 1 in 4 premium amount adjusts because of different volatility expectations.
That's correct. That's good. Do you think the retail trader should pay more attention to this in terms of delta neutrality, less attention? Are they doing just fine with using it as a barometer for where they're going to put their position on? Is that okay enough?
I'm going to stick with the covered call example and say like it's really useful to know what that delta is because you're offsetting your underlying position by that amount. If you sell the at the money call and it's super fat premium and like, yay, I just collected a bunch of cash, like you're effectively only have a 50% position in that equity. And if you're really bullish on that, you've now actually cut it down to a half. So are you selling the 10 delta call to stay 90% bullish? I think that's a useful, comparison specifically with that strategy, but the probability number or interpreting it as a probability number, super useful too.
Okay, cool. I love it. So here's a question. What happens as implied volatility skyrockets in an underlying? Where do deltas tend? So where do they trend to? Anyone got a thought?
If implied volatility is going up, then deltas, if particularly on the wings, the deltas will increase.
So the out of the money, when you say wings, that means the out of the money options, whether they're call or puts.
Yeah. Well, anywhere that's further away from the price, it will tend to escalate.
Okay,
However,
so deltas go up on both sides, right? Okay, good.
Yes. Yeah.
But they only go up to a certain point, right? I think if we have massive implied volatility, everything becomes a 50 delta for the most part, right? We're talking coin tosses because implied volatility is so high. And one quick important note for the folks is that implied volatility has nothing to do with direction, right? It doesn't say up or down. It just says magnitude, how much. We don't know which way, but it's how much. That's why we get that 50 delta, trend when implied volatility skyrockets. We don't know where it's going to be. It's moving, but we don't know which direction. So everything tends toward 50, right?
Yep.
So something to pay attention to.
We used to call one of my trading buddies 50 delta because we didn't know which way he was going, but he was going to move.
I love it. Okay, what else about delta do we need to touch upon here? Retail traders, we said, aren't hedging it. They're not really getting delta neutral like a pro would or a market maker or dealer. We've defined it pretty well. We understand what happens when implied volatility goes up and goes down. What else are we missing here?
I think we should talk to Mark about why do dealers hedge delta?
Okay.
I think, in very much in the same ways that if a lot of buy side people are coming to the options market for equity like exposure to, with a delta direction to their whole position, the providers of that liquidity distinctly do not want to have that delta position because that's not the way they want to trade. The goal of a liquidity provider is to be completely agnostic as to which way the market moves, either in delta or vol space, right? They want to be as roughly hedged as possible. And deltas are sort of the most explicit way to do that. And so, because they're trading volatility and their edge is priced in volatility terms, they need to hedge out the delta direction of that so that they're capturing pure volatility buys and sells,
right,
rather than directional buys and sells.
And put another point to it here from the market maker dealer side. Don't forget where their edge proposition lies. It lies in the bid ask. They get to buy bids and sell offers all day long. If they're doing that, when they buy a bid at a certain price, the reason they're buying that bid is because of where the stock price is relative to how they price that option. Having said that, if that option is worth X at a stock price of Y and they buy it on the bid, they should be hedging it where the stock price is because that's how they're getting their valuation anyway. So now they erase that variability up and down by hedging it, and they kind of capture that edge for themselves. Now, is it automatic? No, they don't automatically get the edge. There's a lot of things going into place, which we'll get into when we get into gamma, theta, vega, and rho, that can harm them based on how those all behave, right, collectively. But I don't think the market. The retail person understands that we were just. Oh, I got the thumbs up. Look at that thumbs up. I got the thumbs up. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. Hold my hands out like this.
Automated.
Yeah, but people, a lot of retail folks don't understand that. We as pros in the old days, I was the worst at direction there ever was. I had no idea which way the stock was going. I could care less. for that matter. So we never studied technical indicators and direction at all. At least I didn't. So, I had too much edge built in to that bid ask over thousands and thousands and thousands of strikes. We do that all day long. We just keep swimming in the stream, right?
Yeah. There's a couple other things too. First is that hedging delta just by buying or selling the stock underneath it is very cheap in transaction costs. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to hedge,
right?
Using underlying. But the other thing too is if Lex, the retail trader, is buying a call, and then Mark, the pro trader, is now short a call.
Mm-hmm.
When Mark hedges his call, say a 50 delta call or something, and buys 50 shares,
mm-hmm.
It almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy in favor of the retail trader.
Meaning, because I bought the call, he's buying stock, pushing that up a little bit, making my call maybe a little bit more valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the day trade retailer, that's probably pretty safe to say. Yeah. Okay. What else are we missing here? I'm trying to think. In terms of this delta thing, to me it's the Greek that is easiest to sink your teeth into and understand, I think. And yet, I think for the real pro, it just goes without saying how they behave with it, right? They tend to be pretty neutral. Although, Mark, we've talked about this in the past. We kind of think maybe the big market maker houses now, or the wholesaler group, they probably aren't hedging as much as we think anymore, because of the diversity of their book.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a couple. You can explicitly hedge every individual name in your book, or you can start going towards like the more big head models, because like even more liquid than individual stocks are like E-minis or whatnot. So like you can hedge a whole book based on S&P correlation or something like that. But I think another big part of it is that like, as cheap as it is to hedge in stocks, and like these numbers are denominated in mils, but like that's still real money when you're doing millions of shares. And so a dealer generally would prefer to not hedge as much, or I should say optimize their hedging frequency based on the probability of an offsetting trade coming in, right? Because you don't want to like buy stock and then sell stock, and that's just crossing the spread on yourself.
Sure.
So hedging strategies depend on the texture and frequency at which order flow comes in any given name or book also.
Right. Yeah, and then that's a good point, because the way I describe it when I do the speaking junkets is deltas for a pro, for a dealer, it's basically using stock. It's like a parking spot. Just park them in there, pull the car in, get yourself delta neutral. You'd rather have another option against what you just did, right? An offsetting option in terms of delta. Because why? Options have value to market makers. They have theoretical value. They want to get edge on every trade. There's no edge to stock for them, right? It's zero edge. It's just a place to park your deltas for a while until you can grab something else to get edge. If I could, like you said, Mark, in the trading days, buy call, sell call, buy call, sell call, buy put, sell put all day long. I never want to touch the stock if I don't have to. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that because of timing and activity levels and that sort of thing. So you're just parking stuff in there all the time.
Well, and your position is changing dynamically too, right? Like, especially in like a super short dated option, like a zero DTE or whatnot, like 90 deltas in the morning might be zero at the end of the day or whatnot. So that's like, and hour by hour, you might not make any trades, but your delta position changes. Or maybe the trades are offsetting that change in delta, but it's hedging is an exercise in balancing randomness.
Yeah, that is true. It's a good point. All right. Anything else? We got to go. So that was a good talk. We're going to hit gamma next week. Yeah. In the order of delta, gamma, theta, vega, rho. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the sub-Greeks, Jason's favorite topic. So
this is where we need Professor Jason.
We touched on it today.
We did.
We did. Raising wings.
We did. We talked about Vana without saying the word Vana. I tried to avoid it the whole time because we'll get to that later. Right? All right. Any last thoughts, boys? We got to run.
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
Happy trading.
Yeah. Don't forget OIC in a month. You guys aren't going. I know. I'm going. I'm on a
No, I'm not
panel,
going.
so you hang in there. You stay in the truck.
All right.
All right, boys. Good to see you. We'll see you next week. Thursday, the talk will be Gamma. Don't forget to sign up for the hub, hub.tradier.com. Visit Mark at harvestedfinancial.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Visit Jason at vol.land. I always forget yours. Say it again.
I have vol.land. We have addamfunds.com. And
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Very good. And just drop us a note every once in a while about topics you'd like us to cover. So enjoy the rest of the week. I always look forward to the weekends. I'm not going to tell you why, but it's usually a cork popping somewhere along the way. Always fun. Good to see you guys. Happy trading, Mark.
Happy trading.
Bye.
All opinions expressed by Tradier Hub contributors are solely the contributors' opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Tradier nor its affiliates and/or subsidiaries. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Hub contributors as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or to follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinion. The contributors' opinions are based on their own personal research, but neither Tradier nor its affiliates and/or subsidiaries warrants its completeness or accuracy, and it should not be relied upon as such. Any trades or positions discussed or referred to by contributors may or may not be actual live trades or positions. Such information is not intended to be financial or investment advice. Tradier Inc. is the parent company of Tradier Brokerage Inc. Tradier Brokerage Inc. and Tradier Inc. are separate entities with their own products and services. Securities products and services are offered through Tradier Brokerage Inc. Tradier Brokerage Inc. is an independent subsidiary of Tradier Inc., all rights reserved, member FINRA SIPC.